It's the radio guy, Mike Prince. How you doing? It's time for us to strap up and go for another ride here on the Mike Prince Show. Of course, our mission is to bring you the news that you can use each and every day. We got some good lineups for you on today. We'll hear from Joe Dwyer, who is the president of the College Insider. Get a chance to talk some hoops with him in the future of tournament play for the 2021 campaign. We'll also hear from B.J. Jones. B.J. Jones, college football analyst. We'll talk some X's and O's. We did have a football game this weekend. Austin Peay and Central Arkansas. Did you watch it? Did you feel that football fix get covered over the weekend? Talk about that and a whole lot more. Don't forget our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are all at The Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is Open Mic Broadcast Network. Our website, obnradio.com. And, of course, we have a 24-hour dial-in message line, 713-570-6736. You can chime in anytime, leave your questions, thoughts, comments, or concerns. And without that, or should I say with all of that, let us jump into today's episode. Well, I pray that all is well. Praying for those who were victimized by Laura past couple of days. Not as much damage as they thought was going to happen, but enough is enough. And we pray a speedy recovery on that. Well, as we mentioned in the introduction, Austin Peay and Central Arkansas were the only FCS game on the circuit. And you're talking about a new meaning of all eyes on me. Central Arkansas victorious 24-17. Personally, I did not watch it. I was preoccupied doing other stuff. There's always stuff to do in the land of radio. But I was able to track some scores. We'll talk with BJ a little bit later on about that. But our first guest, who we're going to be breaking to get set up here momentarily, is going to talk about the impact of the COVID throughout the basketball sector of things. We talked about it a little bit on Football Friday, where basketball is probably the vocal point right now for the NCAA. We'll explain that in a little bit more. We're going to break now and get ready for our first guest of the evening, none other than Mr. Joe Dwyer. You listen to the Mike Prince Show live edition on the Open Mic Broadcast Network, and we'll be right back.
Attention all coaches. Whatever your sport is, we want to tell your story. Dial our 24 hours, 7 days a week message line at 713-570-6736. Leave your game results, team results, and player results on our 24-hour message line, 713-570-6736. Have sports, will travel. The Open Mic Broadcast Network, serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics.
This is Rob Butler with your Southland Report. Stephen F. Austin football will not play during the spring 2021 semester, even if the Southland Conference opts to play. SFA would opt out of a potential Southland Conference spring football season to focus on fall 2021, according to Athletic Director Ryan Ivey. From the beginning, the Lumberjacks have opposed the spring football season because of worries about player safety. SFA is down scholarships after NCAA sanctions, so focusing on developing the roster is a higher priority. The hope is that having a developed and healthy roster come fall 2021 would give the Lumberjacks a leg up. SFA being ineligible for the FCS playoffs in 2020 made the decision easier. And that's Rob Butler, Open Mic Broadcast Network.
Come on.
Laptops, MP3 players, cameras, video games, cell phones. In times like these, schools can become a shopping mall for thieves. Don't become a victim of crime. Leave your valuable stuff at home, and if you do have to bring them to school, keep them with you. Write down their serial numbers, and don't flash expensive items around. Be smart. If you have something cool, there's a good chance someone else will want it too. Keep cash and ATM cards in a secure place, and never give anyone your PIN number. And don't leave your school bag lying around where it can become a temptation to someone else. If you have something stolen, report the situation immediately. The sooner you tell someone, the better the chance you'll get it back. Visit ncpc.org to learn more about how to prevent school theft. That's ncpc.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Prince live as we get ready to move forward with our first guest. He is Mr. Basketball, president of College Insider, all the way on that northeastern side of the country, Massachusetts area. We'll present to some and introduce to others none other than Mr. Joe Dwyer. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing, man? Appreciate you having me on.
I am excited, man, and I'm glad to have you on. For those who might not be aware, you have 3 major tournaments during basketball. Of course, we all know about the Big Dance and the NCAA. Then we have the NIT, and then you have the CIT. But a lot of people might not be aware that the CIT is not a new kid on the block. So, Joe, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself to the listening audience and then describe and explain how we got thus far with the CIT.
Well, Mike, it really came about just because of opportunities. You go back to 2009, and you look around the landscape, and there were a lot of teams in previous years that had won 20-plus games. And, you win 20-plus games in the ACC and the SEC, you're going to the NCAA tournament. And some of these same teams at the mid-major level were getting locked out, not getting any postseason. And so really just kind of came from that where, there are a lot of good programs, and a lot of those programs came to our tournament, had some success, and then parlayed that into future success, albeit the NIT or the NCAA. So it's been a nice little deal and really catered specifically to mid-majors. We're not taking any programs from Power 5 schools.
Okay, and so that's one of the unique differences about the CIT. It's kind of focused on mid-majors, i.e. FCS basketball programs for the most part, correct?
That's right. Yep. So your teams from the Southland Conference, we've had a few teams from the SWAC and West Coast Conference. Occasionally you get a team from the Mountain West or the Atlantic 10, but predominantly it's from your 25 or so mid-major leagues that I think everybody would recognize as being a mid-major conference.
Absolutely, and you've always had a special eye for HBCU programs as well. I almost said Tennessee, but Texas Southern and Hampton were on. It looked like a collision course for those two to meet at the finals a couple of years back. It might have been last year. Was that last year, Joe? I'm getting confused. I'm getting older, man, so I don't know. But they were on a collision course. There's some exciting basketball play. Go right ahead.
We're not supposed to play favorites, but the athletic director at Hampton, Gene Marshall's a good friend. And I was trying to hold back rooting for them openly. But I thought it was a great story. And he and I spoke as the tournament unfolded. As it turned out, both Texas Southern and Hampton got to the semifinals, the Final Four, if you will. And it was the first time two HBCUs that advanced to Division I postseason tournament Final Four. It never happened previously. So, we thought that was really neat. Both teams came within a basket. Both games went down to the final minute. Texas Southern actually went to overtime before they were beaten by Green Bay. So it was that close to two HBCUs playing for, I guess you could say, like a de facto mid-major national championship of sorts. Would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, it would have been extremely cool. We were tracking those games, and we were kind of like licking our chops. Man, we're going to have a nice storyline here. But it was still a great storyline, but those opportunities could not be afforded unless you had this CIT tournament. I know that was redundant because it's called College Insider Tournament, but, I'm just a creature of habit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, during that run, the Texas Southern Louisiana Monroe game was as good a postseason game as you'll ever see.
Yes,
it was
sir.
that good. It was 3 overtimes. It was one big made shot after the next. And what I thought was one of the really cool things is not only did they have a full house, but I want to say they took 2 or 3 busloads of fans from Texas Southern. And I remember I could still see Johnny Jones walking off the court saluting the fans that had made the trip. And I thought, that's really neat. This is a game, you see a lot of the NIT games, and I love the NIT. It's a tradition-rich deal. But a lot of those games are played between, they like to say, maybe an SEC team that's disappointed that they're not in the NCAA tournament. You get a lot of that, in the NIT in recent years because, they feel like, hey, our season isn't what it should have been. Whereas teams that are playing in the CIT, they're disappointed that they're not going to get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. But Texas Southern, I think, had 24 wins coming into the CIT last year. So they were excited to keep playing basketball, and as was Monroe. And so I thought that game was like kind of a microcosm of a lot of games have been played like that in the history of the CIT.
Absolutely. And it's that shot in the arm. I can remember TSU had a disappointing loss in the SWAC tournament, and they were, heads down, and they got this invite, and I don't know what the window of opportunity to accept the invite. Maybe you can explain that, but it was like rejuvenation for their program and for the season, and they took advantage of it and went on one heck of a run.
Well, Gene Marshall was a big factor in that because he and Kevin Granger, the AD at Texas Southern, are good friends. And the timing of it, the SWAC tournament runs into the final weekend right before Selection Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so while teams know in advance that there's an interest level on our part to have them in the event, the turnaround time, especially it's not just the SWAC. There are a lot of tournaments, mid-major-wise, that run into that last weekend of the season. And I want to say it was Thursday or Friday. And then Gene had a conversation with Kevin because I know Johnny Jones had expressed an interest in playing. And then suddenly they were in the tournament, headed to New Orleans for an opening round game. So a lot of those things kind of come together last minute. If you're playing in a league like, say, the Big South, your tournament gets over a week early. It comes a lot easier to get those things in place. But our guys do a great job. And I've mentioned Gene a couple times. Gene's on our selection committee, one of the more active guys. And he played a major role and almost, because his team obviously got to the semifinals of the tournament too, almost met his buddy Kevin Granger in that championship game.
Yeah, that would have been another interesting matchup as well. We're speaking right now with Joe Dwyer, president of the College Insider. Now, Joe, if you could, for some clarity purposes, from my understanding, the CIT is somewhat structured like FCS tournaments or football tournaments. Is that close to assume that, or how does that work?
Well, we use the old NIT model, and for fans that are my age and your age, because we're not young anymore, they'll remember before the old days where there was no bracket. And now the difference is Jack Powers and those guys back in the day wanted to get certain teams through to Madison Square Garden. They always wanted to have a little local flavor. We do it for a different reason. We kind of reset the deal after each round for the purposes of trying to keep it geographical. In case of Texas Southern, it's a good example. They really didn't leave their general area until they had to go play Green Bay in the semifinals. They had played against New Orleans. They played Monroe. They went down and played at UT Rio Grande Valley. So they were on a bus until it came time for the semifinals. And so that's one of the things we like to try to keep in place, keep travel down. Obviously helps the tournament in terms of the cost, but also makes it a little bit easier because if you're taking a bus, you have a chance to bring some fans. And
Right.
Texas Southern had a very good, loyal fan following during the tournament last year, which you're not getting that in the NIT. I don't think you're going to get family and friends that are going to follow Stanford if they're playing in the NIT, wherever they're going to play, but you're not going to get like a rabid type of following like a lot of the schools that participate in the CIT. And I think that that's really kind of cool. Like you said before, it's an opportunity for them. And we kind of liken the CIT in a lot of ways to like a pre-New Year's Day bowl game. And like, you're playing in the Gator Bowl. The rest of the country might not be all fired up about it, but the teams that are participating in the Gator Bowl, they're pretty jacked up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when it comes, say if a team wanted to host, do you have the bid process like you do for the FCS playoffs, football playoffs?
A lot of it, we don't do a bid as much as in the past. What we've done is a straight up hosting fee, and so the schools will pay that, and then they can make their money back in some cases through gate concessions, etc. A lot of it's dependent upon hostability. Some schools, Marshall, which ended up winning the tournament that year, had the ability to host throughout, had the money in which to do that, and also knew that they were going to get good crowds. I know Texas Southern had tried at least one point, wasn't able to make it happen in terms of getting the facility. So I think the two things that mid-majors run into is, one, they have spring break, so students sometimes are going to be off campus. And two, I don't think a lot of people understand this, it's not Kentucky where the arena is locked down in March, okay, just in case they have to play in the NIT or something. At the mid-major level, you're renting your facility out for concerts. I mean, I can tell you, we actually, back in the day, had a team could not host because they were having a flower show in the arena, like flowers. So those are things that people don't understand take place at the mid-major level. So sometimes you'll look at the field, and every year it happens where we'll get a bunch of emails from people that, hey, how come our team with 22 wins is having to play on the road against a team with 19 wins? And these are things that factor into it. Hampton was one of those schools that was able to clear the deck, except for, I think, their quarterfinal game against NJIT. Other than that, they were prepared if they needed to host as many games as possible. So it's just really, in some cases, as simple as that.
Okay, we're talking again with Joe Dwyer, president of College Insider. And, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, it's 24 teams for your tournament, is it not?
We started at 12. At 16. We were 16 for a couple of years, and then we went to 24 back in 2011, and that was short-lived. After that, we went to 32. In the last few years, we've had tournaments with less than 32, for the simple reason that we've had Selection Sunday show up, and not just from the NCAA tournament's point of view, but the NIT has taken a lot of our teams. And instead of filling it out with teams that were 3, 4, 5 games under 500, we just decided that if we have to have a tournament with 26 teams, then that's how it'll be. And so there have been a few occasions in recent years with that happening, but look at the overall quality of the field. And we said, hey, you're better off at the end of the day having a tournament that's full of quality teams like Texas Southern. New Orleans had a heck of a year. I want to say they got beat in the championship game of the Southland Conference tournament that season, as opposed to just taking some teams to fill it out and get to 32 that have really poor records.
Right. So you go for the quality versus the quantity.
Correct.
Very good. Well, that's kind of our approach here. Everybody's not going to fit, but those that do fit, it's a perfect fit, and you get, in the bottom line, a quality product from that. So that's a very good approach.
I'll give you a good example. That same tournament, Grambling, I believe, was 500 when they came to the tournament.
Uh-huh.
And went to Rio Grande Valley. And for anybody that can find this clip, you can find it, I'm sure, on YouTube. All the years I've watched basketball, I've never seen a ball stay out of the rim. They want to get out of the rim so badly. I mean, they had that game won. Their kid went coast to coast, hit a layup, and that ball spun around. I swear it went around the rim 3 or 4 times and then popped out. It would have been a game-winning buzzer beater. Just a heartbreaking loss for Dante Jackson's team. And but a good example, I think, that maybe Rio Grande Valley didn't realize. Look at the record and see, 500 team. Don't realize, that in the case of, say, a Grambling or a Texas Southern, they have when you sit down and look at their non-league schedule and see there are no wins being found in the early part of the season when you're Grambling and Texas Southern. And if they are, they're pretty hard fought. You're going out and having to play some big-time opponents to bring in some money for your athletic department. So a lot of times these schools, once the tournament rolls around, those records, a game or two over 500 or at 500, are a little bit deceiving because of the quality, the harsh, what they went through, harsh, scheduling early in November and December.
Yes, sir. It always is one of those deceptive early season marks, and then when they get into that conference play, it's a whole new ball game. When we talk about this tournament, the impact that it has and the popularity that has been picking up each year, we got this young lady by the name of Corona who's kind of putting a halt to all this potentials right now, right? Can you explain the impact that it has had on your tournament in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because we, with about it all snuck up, as you know, it all happened so very fast. We had a meeting here about 3 or 4 days before everything got shut down. And what are we going to do if this thing doesn't go away type of thing? And it was like amazing how you went from discussions and then the NCAA was suddenly talking about it. And then Rudy Gobert test positive and they shut it down. And everything in a heartbeat was shut down. And we almost really didn't have time to kind of take it all in, digest it, if you will. And, in the aftermath, it really did. Grambling was a team that, I mentioned before, they were coming back. Hampton, despite the fact that they were under 500, it had a heck of a finish. And they were excited to be playing, against Tennessee State, which would have been a heck of a game. Youngstown State was a team up in the middle part of the country that it had a really good kind of a breakout season. They were excited. People follow mid-major basketball be familiar with what Merrimack did back in the Northeast Conference up this way, who their first season in Division I won the Northeast Conference. Man, that's unheard of. And so for them, it was going to be an opportunity to ride an already Cinderella-type season into a postseason. And you just feel for all the kids. I mean, that's the first thought is you look at all these great stories around the country, and I mean, we could sit here and probably run through them, take a half an hour. And you just feel like, it's not just the kids that are going to play in the NCAA tournament. A lot of these kids, this would have been their opportunity to finish their careers, and playing some postseason basketball. And again, sort of like a small bowl game. And when it all hit, literally in the snap of a finger, it was over. And still, as we head into what we hope will be another season, there's still a lot of questions of what this season's going to look like. Forget about postseason for a moment, just what the regular season's going to look like. So, yeah, this is something clearly nobody's ever seen anything like this. And there's still a lot of discussion as to what exactly it's going to look like as we get into the next couple months here.
Absolutely. The non-conference, from the research and data I've been able to get my hands hold to, they're not going to put too much emphasis on the non-conference, even though we know that's where the mid-majors make their money, quote unquote, leading into conference play. They're going to try to do whatever they can for conference play. And we know we got 3 different tiers now when we're talking about NCAA, NIT, and CIT. The NCAA is talking more of like a bubble-like concept to try and get it, because let's be honest, anyone that's listening to this segment of today's show, they know that the NCAA's golden goose is basketball. Football might be the brute force, but basketball is the golden goose, and they're working feverishly right now to make sure that some type of tournament is going to be presented in the spring. And as that dominoes down, how challenging is it going to be for you to be able to keep that going from the CIT perspective?
Well, the idea, I think, of putting something in a bubble is probably unrealistic. I mean, we've already understood the idea that, listen, it may conceivably be possible that it's not a 1-year hiatus, but a 2-year. I think that we're just, as you've seen from what you're looking at with Major League Baseball, the NBA, NHL, football, NFL is going to be played with no fans. I think we're just, the sports world wants to see some sort of event take place, right? Want to try to get something to make it happen. Take all precautions and then see what comes from this. I've been encouraged, actually, by there have been some people that have tested positive for corona in Major League Baseball, but they've done a fairly decent job of continuing to push on, and the vast majority of the guys aren't getting sick. The NBA and the NHL, they're kind of locked down. So I think we'd expect that those guys would remain healthy. I could tell you that there's no way they won't have an NCAA tournament because they can't afford not to have an NCAA tournament. I had one mid-major conference commissioner tell me that, hey, we got a haircut last year, not having an NCAA tournament. We can't afford another one. I think it's vital. The big boys can survive it. They would prefer not to because of the money that's involved. But my guess, worst case scenario, you would see something along the lines of what the NBA is doing right now. But you know what? We're also still in August. So I think it's great to have these plans, but let's see how football does. Let's see how the vaccine and the saliva tests and some of the other things that they're trying to put forth now, let's see how that goes. And we could be living in an entirely different world, good or bad, come next February, March. But right now, I'd say you're dead on. I think that the big boys are looking at a conference-only type schedule, and I think that that's something that mid-majors, it's unfortunate because, as you know, mid-majors make a lot of coin, heading into the season by going and playing those games. And so that's going to take a lot of revenue out of their budgets. But in the short term, I think they can deal with that as long as it's not a reoccurring thing. But they absolutely must have an NCAA tournament this year, and I think they'll have it.
Okay, and with that being said, for the CIT, do you have any type of contingency plan to where you might not play with your normal, robust number of institutions and possibly have a scaled-down version for the sake of the games?
Yes. Yeah, we've looked at a couple of different options. It's funny. We made somebody joke recently that, hey, these conversations are good to have just because we're not having any other conversations right now anyway. we might as well take a look at all possibilities. And funny, from that, we're born a few pretty good ideas, whether it's a scaled-down version. I know you and I talked off air the other day about more of a regional thing. So, I always say that we're going to let the institutions sort of decide how much this is important to them. And we've got great feedback, in the off season, because my initial thought is, hey, listen, let's be honest. In the grand scheme of things, the NCAA tournament is important. The CIT is not vital to the long-term success. We're realistic about what our tournament is. But speaking to a lot of conference commissioners and a lot of schools, the thought is, hey, a lot of programs didn't get postseason, at the mid-major level. They didn't get that opportunity to continue playing, and so there will be some excitement, for the possibility of playing. And again, that's all. It's easy to say that now, but I think there is some truth to that. Provided everything goes well, I think it's conceivably possible that we could have everything from a normal operating, limited fans, to some more creative ways of possibly doing things. But I could tell you right now, we're not going to Orlando bubble and doing anything as extreme. That NBA production has been completely off the charts. It's been awesome the way that they've set that up. I would expect the NCAA tournament would look something similar, worst case scenario.
Okay. If you had to pick the bubble city for the tournament, where would you say it'd be? Kansas City, maybe?
It's a good question. I think that, the Orlando, I know IMG, which is right now hosting the WNBA, they have received phone calls from every Power 5 conference and then a couple of additional conferences about playing a season there. And from what I'm gathering is that guys are looking at every possibility across the country, trying to, in movies they have talent scouts and location scouts, and there are location scouts out there trying to figure out, hey, this might be a possibility, that might be a possibility. It's easy for me to sit here and say this, but I still like the idea if you can find a venue where, like a Vegas, some place where you have multiple facilities in close proximity, and if you had to do a tournament, to me, that would be the best way to do it. Try to keep it in one general location. I've heard people say, well, there may be one hub in Atlanta, another hub in Florida, and you're still going to have to take those kids out of those bubbles to send them to another bubble for the Sweet 16 or the Final Four or whatever. So Indianapolis is the destination of the Final Four this year. And the idea, there's multiple facilities in Indianapolis which could be used. And to me, that would make the most sense. But again, if we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves, I think that, we're going to know a lot more in, say, 30 days, 60 days once college football starts to pick up.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, my friend, within those next 30 to 60 days, we definitely got to invite you back over here. Is that an invitation that you're willing to take, sir?
That's absolutely. Well, anytime we're going to talk college basketball, not talk about all the other stuff that's going on, that's a good thing.
Well, look, Joe, I really and truly appreciate you joining in with us on today. We have a custom here on the Mike Prince Show that will allow our guests to have some closing thoughts and segments as we get ready to close this segment down. We give you some closing thoughts and comments, and the floor is now yours.
Well, Mike, I just, this is a good opportunity, I think, for people with everything that's going on to just, sports are important. I think and I've always been a big supporter of sports in the sense that it gives people, with everything that's going on in the country right now, from a social justice and racial division, sports to me is the perfect opportunity. You're able to play a sport, whatever sport, with people from various backgrounds, from various economic situations. And a good friend of mine is the director of player development for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he's always used the example of in what world, only of the world of sports, would a guy like Phillip Rivers, a country boy from Alabama, become friends and teammates with a guy like Antonio Gates, who came from the inner city of Detroit. And you get these different cultures that come together with one common goal, and that's to win. And as much as I think people are aggravated by a lot of things that are going on in the sports world now, to me, the sports world is a great way in order for people to interact and learn a lot more about each other. So we don't need less, we need more sports.
And on that, sir, I couldn't have summed it up better myself, man. And when it's a good interview, when you didn't get a chance to go over everything that you wanted to go over, which means the door is open for you to definitely come back, my friend.
Well, I probably sucked a little oxygen out of the room, too.
So it's all right. Well, you sucked up the first half, and I did the other half. How about that?
Okay.
Appreciate you very much. That was Mr. Joe Dwyer, president of the College Insider. We're going to take us a break, and we'll get ready to talk a little college football with our football analyst, B.J. Jones. You listen to the Mike Prince Show live. Keep it right where you got it, and we will be right back, I promise.
Attention all coaches. Whatever your sport is, we want to tell your story. Dial our 24 hours, 7 days a week message line at 713-570-6736. Leave your game results, team results, and player results on our 24-hour message line, 713-570-6736. Have sports, we'll travel. The Open Mic Broadcast Network, serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics.
Your education, your healthcare, your community, your future. Your vote counts for many things. Take control. Get registered. Get educated. Get out and vote. Learn more at www.vote411.org. This is a public service announcement from Open Mic Broadcast Network.
Come on.
Laptops, MP3 players, cameras, video games, cell phones. In times like these, schools can become a shopping mall for thieves. Don't become a victim of crime. Leave your valuable stuff at home, and if you do have to bring them to school, keep them with you. Write down their serial numbers, and don't flash expensive items around. Be smart. If you have something cool, there's a good chance someone else will want it too. Keep cash and ATM cards in a secure place, and never give anyone your PIN number. And don't leave your school bag lying around where it can become a temptation to someone else. If you have something stolen, report the situation immediately. The sooner you tell someone, the better the chance you'll get it back. Visit ncpc.org to learn more about how to prevent school theft. That's ncpc.org. A message.
At 17 cents a day, you can make a huge impact on our local and regional high school and college student athletic coverage. We provide talk shows, live game coverage, and much, much more. But we need your support to move forward. Visit our website today at obnradio.com. Click on the PayPal button, which is safe and secure, and become a listening partner today. At 17 cents a day, you can make a huge impact. 17 cents a day comes out to $60 a year. Will you become part of the Open Mic Broadcast Network team? Visit that website at obnradio.com and become a listening partner today. Serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics, the Open Mic Broadcast Network, Prairie View, Texas.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Join us for a daily episode of the Mike Prince Show right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network.
And welcome back to the Mike Prince Live right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. I love that Jack Nicholson. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. Well, the person we need right now is on the Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union hotline, and that is none other than a football college analyst for the Open Mic Broadcast Network. He don't like when I call him this, but I got to. Brandon B.J. Jones. How you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing pretty well, Mike, man. How's it going?
Man, I'm doing great. And before we get started, why you don't like it when I call you Brandon?
So for the name Brandon, no one actually knows me as Brandon. Like, no one calls me Brandon. Like, if you were to go around my family and say Brandon, they will probably look at you like I have no idea what his name is. BJ has always been the name that I've always gone by. School, is everything. BJ's always been that name. But my mom loves when other people call me Brandon. But she doesn't call me Brandon herself. But she loves it when other people do.
Well, you know, from the movie Coming to America, when they were at the barbershop scene and they was talking about Muhammad Ali, and he said, well, I'm going to call him what his mama called him. His mama named him Cassius, so I'm going to call him Cassius. So, look, I try not to call you Brandon over the air no more, but it just rolls. Brandon BJ, that just rolls good. Enough of that, man. We had some football this weekend. FCS football.
We had a little ball down in Montgomery. You had Austin P going against Central Arkansas, two teams who are top 25 teams at the FCS level. Both were participants in the FCS playoffs. You got Austin P, who won the OVC a year ago, and then you have Central Arkansas, who got the at-large bid, if I'm not mistaken, out of the Southland Conference. So you had two solid teams going at each other. Sloppy football, which is what we expected with us going through this pandemic and not having a spring season and trying to go through things from a practice and procedure point with the new normal. We did see a little sloppy football last night.
Well, you saw it because, to be honest with you, it didn't really strike my interest. And I fell asleep anyway. I go to bed early, BJ. But I did keep a tracking of it. And as you mentioned, it was to be expected that you weren't going to have a smooth, crisp, and let's be honest, this is always expected in the first couple of games of the season. And then when you add the pandemic effect, it's to be expected. But when you looked at it from your eyeball gauge, did the guys seem comfortable in competition mode when it was time to engage one another?
Yeah. The guys look real comfortable. If you looked at this and you did not know that anything was going on, I mean, it looked like normal outside of the sidelines with the the mask and so forth. But everything looked pretty normal.
Okay, very good. I'm interested to see what the TV ratings look like from ESPN on this one because everyone was hungry for this. It's the only game in the joint, literally. And I can imagine that eyes were all over this thing. So when you watching this game, did it feel like to you, at least subconsciously, that football season was back?
No, and it didn't. So much of from a football standpoint, that you get from me is HBCU football. You know, the SWAC, the MEAC, NCAA, SIAC, and so forth. You know, to me that's football. Everybody else could be playing, but it does not whet my appetite the way that if, you know, Prairie View or Southern or, you know, Grambling or Alabama A&M or FAMU was scrapping it up, you know, tonight. So now it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna give you a little teaser, but I'm sitting back waiting for the real thing.
Okay. If you had to do it all over again, would you watch this game, A, out of curiosity, or B, just to because you do enjoy football and whet your appetite for football?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. You know, loving the game, loving when the game is played. Like I woke up this morning and watched some high school football from two teams from Ohio. And also the curiosity, you know, it being the first college game, a lot of people were paying attention to see how the game went. What did anything change from a game day, game procedure standpoint? So I think a lot of people were watching from curiosity as well. And also, man, we haven't seen football at the college level, you know, since LSU and Clemson, you know, back in January. I mean, we are starving for something.
Yeah, and it's ironic that you brought up LSU. Their big-time receiver said, look here, y'all can have it. I'm going to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing. We're speaking right now with B.J. Jones, college football analyst here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Got past that love affair for watching at least some form of football last night between Central Arkansas and Austin Peay. By the way, Central Arkansas was victorious 24-17. Now, Central Arkansas is scheduled to play next week and would have been the time I think was really going to hit. I know PV and Texas Southern fans, the Labor Day Classic, oh my goodness, will not be. And I Feel a Stormy Monday by Bobby Bland. You probably don't know nothing about that, but
don't trust me, no stormy Monday. No stormy Monday.
Yes, sir. So with all that being said, BJ, and everybody is gearing and focusing toward spring ball, have you had a chance to dissect that? And then, two, how do you see that unfolding?
Well, I'm looking at spring ball two different ways. I was very happy, very content that the SWAC was able to get a plan out. We've seen other conferences say, "Hey, spring ball," and there's been no plan behind it. Kudos to Dr. McClellan and the guys in the SWAC office. They came out with a plan. I'm excited about that. You know, I'm interested to see if that plan will be executed and we actually get some spring ball. But a part of me feels like maybe spring ball is kind of kicking the can down the road. And you know, we know realistically it may not be until fall of 21. But if we told y'all that back in June, you know what I mean, it would just kill the spirit. So hopefully they get it off. There is a pessimistic side to me that says, yeah, I don't see it. If you don't go now in the fall, you're making it more difficult to go in the spring. So we'll see. We'll see how everything plays out.
Okay, and with that, I was one under the impression that if you were going to attempt a spring game season or spring season, have an abbreviated like season. We're already accustomed to your spring game. And so what I was thinking, and I'll just bounce this off for you, see how you think it would go. You play your traditional spring game, which would be like a glorified scrimmage, and then you play your rival in the next week or two and call it the season and then get ready to swing things over to the fall. Uh-oh, seems like we may have lost.
I lost the last couple of words to correct for me, Mike.
Okay, well, what I was saying is that we would play your regular spring game and then match up with your rival, your top rival, and you play that game and then call it the spring season, then let's get ready for the fall.
To me, that sounds a lot better. Sounds a lot better. I think the problem that you run into with the spring is that we're talking about an 8 or 9 game spring, but then you come back in late August, early September, and play your 11. We're talking about 19, maybe 20 games for some teams that's a lot to ask on the body, especially when we're in the era we talk about player safety. Ain't a lot of safe player safety when it comes down to that.
Right. We're talking right now with Brandon B.J. Jones. Brandon, I got to take a quick break. Can you hold on through the break, man, and we can continue on? Because I got to get your opinion on the hotbed topic on who is going over to the West from the East when we return. Can you hang with me through this break, sir?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, you're listening to the Mike Prince Show live right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. We'll take us a quick break, and we'll be right back. Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union has 13 different locations to better serve you. Locations in Rosenberg, Missouri City, Katy, College Station, Bryan, Brenham, and Waller, Texas. For more information, you can contact them on their toll-free number, 855-391-2149. Or you can send an email to information@bvscu.org. At 17 cents a day, you can make a huge impact on our local and regional high school and college student athletic coverage. We provide talk shows, live game coverage, and much, much more. But we need your support to move forward. Visit our website today at obnradio.com. Click on the PayPal button, which is safe and secure, and become a listening partner today. At 17 cents a day, you can make a huge impact. 17 cents a day comes out to $60 a year. Will you become part of the Open Mic Broadcast Network team? Visit that website at obnradio.com and become a listening partner today. Serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics, the Open Mic Broadcast Network, Prairie View, Texas. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mike Prince Show live right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. In the middle of a conversation with Brandon B.J. Jones on the Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union Hotline. And B.J., before we took the break, our big brother Carlos Brown, God know we love him. And I know that's your Southernite brother. And he and I had a very well-rounded conversation, if you would, on the show about East and West. We know with the addition of Bethune-Cookman and FAMU coming to the Southwestern Athletic Conference, which is going to be awesome, someone from the East is going to have to make that trek over to the West. And with that being said, it appears that the state of Mississippi would be the option of where that person would have to make that transition. Mm-hmm. Of course, you have Jackson State, Alcorn State, and Mississippi Valley. Now, from your footprint and experience with the conference, of those three, who do you see being the one chosen to go to the West and why?
All right, so if you told me to look at a map and pick one, I would pick Alcorn State. They're the, furthest west when we talk about geographically. Mm-hmm. They sit right off the banks of the Mississippi River. And matter of fact, if you actually look at a map, Alcorn is actually further west than Southern. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. But none of these things happen geographically. That's not the way they split it up. We're kidding ourselves. Who do I think is going to go over to the Eastern Division? It would be Mississippi Valley State. The reason is that we have a travel partner in Arkansas Pine Bluff right there. They're close together. I don't think that the SWAC office wants to split up Alcorn State and Jackson State and the importance of that game and having the potential down the line that game might decide the Eastern Division title. So I don't think they want to split those up. Mississippi Valley outside of Jackson State, man, they really done the Alcorn State Mississippi Valley State rivalry is not what it used to be. It's not 1984 where they had that amazing crowd at Memorial Stadium. It didn't move the needle in the way that it used to. And I think because of that and because how big Alcorn and Jackson State is in all sports, not just football, I see Mississippi Valley actually going over to the West. And having a travel partner in Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Okay, and with that being said, do you see that creating havoc for Valley happen to be the one to transition over to the West?
Yep, because they're in the position outside of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Baton Rouge is not terribly far. Neither is Grambling. But when you start talking about going out to Texas, I mean it is. Whew, I mean that's some hauls. And it's even to look at it from a football standpoint. But when you look at it from a non-revenue sports standpoint, you look at your softball team, baseball, basketball, volleyball, some of those other sports, man, you can really start racking up some duckies as well as the frequent flyer miles.
Well, you also have to consider it'll be the same predicament going to Florida. In actuality, Florida is going to be a bit further for Valley than to go to Texas. Mm-hmm. When you really look at it. And then we talk about those two schools, just like for Texas schools, they now have to go to Alabama and Florida occasionally. Okay, so it's going to be a trek, but we are talking about Valley. And why Valley is like my adopted child. I love Valley. I'm concerned about Valley. And I want what's good for Valley, because if Valley does good, the conference does good. Okay, and we know it's all about the conference, right? Because it's no good for everybody to be at the top of the heap, and you got the lone straggler in the case of a Valley. I think Valley has to come to some reality checks on the operational process. I know they have the smallest budget in the conference, but Alcorn has proven that it's not about the money. It's about the system that you ride or die with and the sport you choose to be dominant in. Now, I didn't say not competitive, but dominant. And we all know that Alcorn put their eggs in the basket of football. Personally, I think Valley should put their eggs in basketball. And with that being said, the challenge that a Valley would have when it comes to football competitiveness, we know the budget is like night and day. So with that being said, BJ, to offset that, I'm going to have to change my system. I can't run the spread like I see everybody else doing. I'm going to have to get an offense that's going to be comparable to the type of player that I could lure to play some D1 ball on a smaller scale, if you allow me to put it that way, but still be able to create enough damage to keep the games interesting and competitive.
Yep. I agree 100%. I think it's easier to make that move in basketball. Basketball, you don't need as many moving pieces. And one or two guys in basketball makes a world of difference. I'm talking about make a world of difference. But also in football, this is something that I've brought up before. I've always wondered, why don't more HBCUs go the route of Georgia Tech or Navy or Army or one of those schools, or Wofford, and run the flex bone, the triple option. It's an offense that you don't see a lot. You don't need the most gifted athletes to run the offense effectively. And because you don't see it a lot, teams are so underprepared when they see it. Georgia Southern is still giving people fits with their triple option. They gave Clemson the fit a few years ago. We've all heard the Nick Saban quote when he talked about them, like how they ran through them like through a tin horn.
Right.
It is an offense that is it is. I'm talking about when it's ran, it's a thing of beauty and perfection. So a team like Valley or anybody in this league, I would not fault them for going to that offense.
Well, people get caught up in the sex appeal, and they, offense, that's going to bring people out to the games. No, what's going to bring people out to the games is winning and being consistently competitive in your events. That's what's going to bring people out to the games, and it's really like an ally for you, because you get to eat up clock if you are undermanned. And I've been on the record for saying I'm going to invest my money if I'm at a program, and I'm not just picking on Valley, but any program that's financially challenged, which is dang near all of them. on FCS schedules and standards according to FBS. But I'm going to invest in a long snapper. I'm going to invest in a kicker, and I'm going to have me at least 2 serviceable quarterbacks because my quarterback is going to be my holder, and I'm going to play position ball, eat up the clock, give me a field goal when I can, and when they think I'm field goal happy, every now and then I'm going to let that holder, who's my serviceable quarterback, hit my 5'40", I mean, not my 5 foot, but my 5'40" tight end, get me another 8 yards, and we can eat up some more clock.
Exactly. and you can name the team, especially at the FCS Division II and Division III level, that have racked up wins and championships present day running that offense.
Absolutely. Well, if the truth be told, that's how Eddie Robinson became the legend that he became.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and once again, I think it's too much of a copycat syndrome where people are afraid of being the quote unquote odd man out. But you got to work with what you got, brother.
And I've seen a lot of teams try to go to the spread recently, especially at our level. The key to the spread is you have to have a quarterback that can run it. You have to have the athletes to run the offense. But the biggest thing is you now have to have the offensive linemen who are a little bit slimmer, a little bit taller, more athletic to be able to make the reach block, to be able to make all the necessary blocks that they need to make in that particular offense. And what you saw when we were very unsuccessful in the non-conference was you saw downhill running offensive linemen, 6'3", 300, 6'2", 6'1", 300, as opposed to those 6'5", 6'6", maybe 290 guys that you need for that offense. We had a downhill running attack with a spread offense, and we were wondering why we aren't successful.
Absolutely, and that wears you down, especially in the trench game as the game progresses on. I might not be getting a whole bunch of yards in the first half of the game, but we're gonna keep grinding, keep pounding, and we're gonna chip away at this thing. And like I say, they're gonna be ugly wins, but guess what? I'm standing victorious in the winner's circle.
Yep.
We're talking right now with B.J. Jones, college football analyst for the Open Mic Broadcast Network. He's got a lot of hats on it and things on his plate right now, but this young man gets it done and gets it done with efficiency, effectiveness, and we're just blessed to have him to be a part of the network. Now, B.J., with everything that's going on, and I know the stories are limited right now, but is there anything in particular that you're working on?
Really looking at the social justice aspect of what we're going through as a society and the impact that's having on college sports, and what will the aftermath be. And with that going on, our HBCUs are in a position to take advantage of that. It's how do we take advantage of it? Do we? And what does that look like?
Okay. And from what you've been able to get thus far, how things coming shaping out?
Man, it's looking. You have more kids who are highly rated. We're talking about ESPN top 300 kids, both football and basketball, making declarations or putting HBCUs inside of their top 5. You just saw a young man, 4-star cornerback, who transferred from Norfolk State, means transferred from Liberty to go to Norfolk State. You're seeing more guys transfer. Jackson State had a basketball player transfer from UL Lafayette. And he talked about, going to an HBCU, the cultural experience, being taught what it means to become a contributing member of society as a black man, as opposed to just go get the next rebound or go just make the next 3 points.
Wow, that was a powerful statement. That was an absolutely powerful statement. Well, with that, man, we can't wait to see the work and get some of the finishing products. In fact, why don't you let the listeners know how they can get more of your work and where they can reach you on social media?
Man, you can find me on Twitter at Inside HBCU Football. Also, my writing work, you can find that at HBCU Game Day. The barbershop is coming soon. Just had a few things need to work on, things they need to take care of outside of the realm of sports. But once that gets done, once everything's over and God has gave us the victory, we're going full blast with that. So you'll be able to hear this voice on the open mic network, The Barbershop with BJ Jones.
Well, God had already worked it out, my man. You keep holding on, keep grinding, and it's already done. That's all I'm going to say. We're not going to turn this into a revival as we get ready to shut out here, but know that he is working in your favor. BJ, we thank you so much for joining in with us on tonight as we get ready to shut this thing down. BJ Jones of the Open Mic Broadcast Network, college football analysis, as you heard him say, coming with The Barbershop real soon. Well, the clock on the wall tells me that it's all, ladies and gentlemen, and I must exit stage left. We want to thank our guest on tonight from College Insider, Mr. Joe Dwyer, and of course, I'm going to say it because his mama likes it, Brandon BJ Jones. I've got to go. My time is far spent. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. As always, we appreciate you guys. Don't forget our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are all at The Mike Prince Show. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Open Mic Broadcast Network. I've got to go. You all be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.